Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Politics as Usual, right here on the Ethos Media Network. My name is Shane G, and today I actually have a special guest. It's the uncle of one of our hosts, Calliope. You're familiar with her from A Trip to Venus, as well as OTI, Open to Interpretation. And so I'm very excited to talk to him and bring him on. Today I have Mr. Eric Carroll. How are you today?
Doing well. How's it going?
I'm good. I'm good. So the first thing I like to really just ask everybody is, when did you find yourself first kind of getting interested in politics, or when did it, feel important to you to be informed?
It's been a while. Back since getting a Bush, second Bush.
Yeah.
I started paying attention to it a lot more and making sure I had the right information anytime I had to sit down and go to the booth and make my voice heard.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me it was around the time of Mike Brown passing, when he passed in St. Louis.
Yes.
And the police killed him, and that was really what kind of piqued it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just felt like that was, such an injustice. And I was actually living with a family at the time. It was when I first moved out here, and it was in Gilbert, and the guy who was the landlord, who also lived in the house, he was a Republican. So me and him used to have a lot of discussions back and forth, but I didn't feel I was as informed as he was.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what started it, and here I am now. So
yeah, no, once you start paying attention and start getting into it, then it'll pique your interest once you start kind of knowing what's going on.
Definitely. So I mean, big weekend, obviously, big news. Former President Trump allegedly took a bullet to the ear. I don't know if I believe that part, but he got shot at. So what were your thoughts when you first heard that?
I couldn't believe it happened when I first saw it. And I did, like some folks, like, no, that didn't happen. See the video footage, and then, once you find that somebody passed away at the scene and a couple of people injured, then you realize, okay, yeah, this whole thing was kind of real, what's going on out there. So, it surprises you, but doesn't surprise you in a way of just the temperature of our politics right now. It's gotten real mean, which it doesn't need to be, but, that's where we are today.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely don't remember it, because my first time being able to vote was the first time Barack Obama was running. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely don't remember it being like how it is now. Like it was polarizing.
Under the surface, it was a little bit because of the racism that was behind it, and you can kind of hear some people just being offended that a black man would be walking into the White House taking that job. So you kind of can see the temperature starting to rise, and some folks kind of taking it a little bit more personal, almost like choosing a side. It's like, folks, we just had an election. We do this every year. There's an election somewhere. There's no need for the temperature to start to boil, but it really did. So leading to where we are now.
Yeah. Now, what do you think was the cause of that? Because I have my ideas, and I think it was very intentional. But what do you think?
Cause of
all the division, I would say.
Division, it was almost as, I think it really was. It did start with race. I really think it did start with, Barack Obama was an affront to a lot of people. It was like, you guys got one, so now it's time for us to get our guy that we want in there, and somebody that can justify some of the feelings that we have. And they found it in Trump, somebody that allows them to say some of the things that they want to say. Because I think at the same time, people got sensitive to how they addressed the president, the respect, all the criticism he received for even things that other presidents had done. We spent 3 days on the news talking about a tan suit.
Yeah.
And lapel pins and who's holding his umbrella. And it got to the point where, for us as black folks, it's like, why are we, making such a big deal out of something that seemed so trivial at the time?
Yeah.
And I think by us saying one thing about it, other folks who were criticizing him for it, it kind of started this whole back and forth, tit for tat, and I just think it's starting to boil over.
And I know that there were some studies that were done as well around. It was after Occupy Wall Street, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was like 2012, 2013-ish. They did studies where right after that, in the media, they started noticing that there was huge increases in stories about race and racism, stories about sexism, stories about homophobia, different things like that. Like it got ramped up in the media a lot after 2012, 2013. And what they correlated that with was, like I said, Occupy Wall Street, where a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, as far as the voters, kind of came together and were like, okay, we need to, stick together regardless of how we feel about this other stuff. We all know we're getting messed over economically.
Yeah.
And then this is where I say the intentional part comes in, because in my opinion, I feel like the whole establishment wants chaos, because then a person like a Donald Trump can come along and he can pin people against each other. And when people are angry, they're a lot more likely to blame their neighbor for what's going on instead of looking up and saying, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. And I definitely can see a lot of that in this. It's, it was all poor folks got together on Occupy Wall Street. Like, hey, wait a minute. We weren't the cause of this crash that happened a little while ago. There's a lot of rich folks who were involved in that who all seemed to kind of skate and walk away. Obama caught a lot of flack behind nobody from Wall Street really going to jail for basically bringing the economy to almost to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
And, folks were kind of fed up. Like, hey, what are you guys doing about this? So what's the easiest and the tried and true way to divide folks? You throw in the race card, you throw in the gay card, and you throw in the people are different card. And your focus changes from really who's picking your pocket. Because if I can convince you that your neighbor next door is stealing all the fruit out of your trees, you're not paying attention to me picking your back pocket, taking all the stuff out of your front door. You're too busy looking out back to see who's stealing out there. You're not paying attention to who's walking in your front door taking stuff from you. And it's worked over time. It's been happening since the end of slavery. It was, if you pit one group against another, you can keep that group angry at each other. They won't pay attention to what's really going on.
And it just plays into, human psychology to a degree, because a lot of times when people feel like they're working hard and they're doing, the right thing, they're doing whatever their parents taught them, go to school, go to college, try to get a good job. And people are finding it more and more difficult to be even comfortable. I don't even necessarily want to say successful, but just comfortable following the right path.
Yeah.
So when you feel like you've done everything right and you're still not where you want to be, a lot of times you're going to look for a reason. And when you have a demigod, basically Donald Trump, coming along and saying, oh, it's the Mexicans' fault, they're stealing all your jobs. Yeah. Or it's, the dirty, like he said about African countries, dirty shithole countries, they're sending people over here. And, when you have that, it's a lot easier to buy into it, I think, especially if you're already susceptible to, conspiracies or, just you're looking for a reason why your life isn't where you want it to be.
Yeah. And it's easier to be angry at somebody you can see and somebody you can touch.
Yes.
And it's hard to be upset with Jamie Dimon, for instance, for the stock market crash, because you'll never see him. You'll never be in the same circle. You'll never know what's going on in his life. But the Hispanic family that moved in down the street, well, how'd they get that money? Which job are they taking that, not allowing me to grow in, how can they afford the same house I have? And they just got here, because a lot of people make assumptions of people that they don't know.
Yeah.
And, it's not looking at throughout the history of this country, the folks that come in as immigrants, they always roll into the lowest paying jobs, the jobs that, people that in this country you would expect that they have graduated from, because your family has been here for generations. You've gotten the education that you mentioned. And so now you're qualified to do something else.
Definitely.
And there was a study a while back on how the races, and I'm I'm going off of memory, so don't quote me on it, but it was about how important education was. And a lot of minorities still felt that it was really important to be educated. And a lot of middle class white folks didn't. And those numbers were starting to separate from each other. So now when you've got young black men, young Hispanic women going into these companies getting jobs, and somebody who didn't go to school are looking at it as if, well, how'd they get this job and I didn't? They got educated, and in their family this is still important. In some other families they didn't think it was.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of times, that'll be because they maybe didn't necessarily have to be as educated to get ahead.
Get that job.
Because if your family's the business owner and they can pass you down the business, why do you need college? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think a lot of them might have had that mentality. And then, the more and more we realize our only way to be able to make it to that same level or higher is through education. That's when you kind of started seeing, I guess I don't even want to necessarily say the playing field even, because when I look at the executive board at my job and stuff, it's still all, 50 plus white men with an occasional woman sprinkled in here and there to make it look all right. But
it still looks
like that. So,
yeah.
What do you think about the two-party system in America? Like how
it's what we have. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Like I said, I am a registered Democrat, but if you give me the issue, I can tell you where I stand on it. It may, and it's not as if how some folks look at their politics now, where they're rooting for I'm a Cowboys fan or I'm a Niner fan.
Man,
and it's not like that, folks. It's you find that issue, and what side of that issue do you stand on? Well, who can help you get to where you want to go? Where do you fit in this whole big thing? But back to what you were saying, two-party system, I think we have room for a third. And I just think the problem with usually the folks with the third is they always want to start at the top, as opposed to doing what the right has done recently, which is they started at the bottom winning local elections. So school boards, local government. And once you get control of those areas, you can begin to make changes to what you want. And, instead of somebody like Cornel West, who's like, I'm not going to get involved in anything local. I want to be president now. It's like, well, wait a minute, man. We already had one person in there that we don't believe is qualified for it. Do we want to do that again?
And then, man, I'm actually happy you brought up Cornel West too, just because I was excited at first, when he announced his campaign, because I'm familiar with his history. I'm familiar with, a lot of the, at least rhetorically, things that he's, said, and, things that he says he stands for, I feel aligned with. He says he's for single payer healthcare. I am too. He says he's for ending all the wars. I am too. He says he's for, taxes paying for public colleges and universities. I am too. Like all of these things line up. It's like, okay, but he's for women's health care. He's for all of these things.
Yeah,
that would be traditionally considered left, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's where the issue came though, and this is what I feel like this gets back to that team thing you were saying. I feel like this is most people's issue, is they're not willing to call out Biden the same way that they're willing to call out Trump. And in Cornel West's case, you're running for president. So you need to be telling us why you're a better option than both of them. You can't be campaigning for Joe Biden and dunking on Trump while you're trying to run for president. You know what I mean? I felt like he was doing too much of that. He was running too much cover for Biden instead of calling it like it was. Because I've done my history on Biden, and he is no friend to even Democrats, I would say, but especially black people. Yeah. And so, that's what makes this election tough to me, because I feel not to me. I'm not voting for Trump, and I'm in all likelihood not voting for Biden either. I'm probably going to write somebody in, but to me, it just seems like pretty much everything you can say about Trump in some form or fashion you can say about Biden, and it is also equally true. For the most part, there's a few things like Biden's not a felon, Trump is. But aside from that, like realistically, when you look on paper at how they both have ran the country, you know, not what they say, but the bills that were passed and the tax cuts and the amount of bombing that we've been doing and all of that kind of stuff, like it's very similar.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's not enough people willing to say that about Biden. What do you think about that?
Well, I think a lot of times folks have to get into the weeds of it. When you look at, say, for instance, the exit from Afghanistan,
Mm-hmm.
right, took all of the heat on that,
Mm-hmm.
on how sloppy it was and everything else. But folks didn't pay attention to the deal that Trump cut before that made it so that was our only exit out.
Mm-hmm.
And all of our news coverage was, this was a horrible situation. It's like, well, can you explain to everybody why we're in that situation? And unless you knew the weeds of it, I could sit here and yell at my TV all day long. It's not going to get it out to the masses. Like, hey, y'all, we made a deal out there that said that was the only way. We closed some more bases, so we could only leave out of one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why we had that mess. And it gets tough and it's frustrating when, like I said, you pay attention to it. And you're probably finding it too, as the more you pay attention to it, you start to see things and you hear someone say something and it's like, well, no, there's a little bit more nuance than that.
Yeah.
Than just what you saw on the TV. You
Yeah.
saw, the final stages of it. Did you know how we got there? How did we get in this situation? And
Yes.
now, if you left me a mess and I'm cleaning it up, all you do is you see me with the shovel.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, what kind of mess you make? Most presidents and people won't get out there and say, hey, I didn't make this mess. When you're a leader and you're in a leadership position, you got to own everything that's out there. So every mess that's out there, I got to own it because I'm the one in charge. You don't want to hear me blaming the last guy. You want to know what I'm doing to fix it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just for me, we have to begin to decide that, okay, Biden may not be perfect, but can I get involved to the point of I take a Biden and I begin to push him more my direction, meaning I'm going to go on the local side of my election and I'm going to vote for this person that I'm aligned with.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try to get that person into an office where they can say something. And then we keep pushing left, going that way. And I keep going back to the right because they did it perfectly.
They did.
Now they got everybody that they wanted to go as far right as they wanted. So now what used to be the center is no longer the center.
Correct.
Yeah, I think we're playing
the whole country to the right.
Yeah, we're playing on the right side of the field, which we considered extremists years ago.
Yep. Obama said that himself. He actually said, if I was running with my same policies in the 1980s, I would be considered a Republican.
Yeah.
So that pretty much tells you how far to the right the whole Overton window is gone when it comes to the discussion. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I had the discussion with my son and he was asking, similar questions about that. And it's like when you're negotiating something, I said, son, if you want $100,000, you're going to go in there and tell the folks all you want is $100,000?
Right.
No, you go in there and tell them I want 150.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they've got to come in and say, okay, well, maybe he wants more than that. So now that's how you negotiate your way back to the middle. They do the same thing with car emissions, because as a matter of fact, that's what the conversation was. It's like they want to get rid of all cars. It's like, no, but if I tell you I don't want any gas powered cars on the road, you as a car company are going to be like, well, hey, how about we go with just 40%, 30%. And that's how I begin to pull you in the direction in which I want to go. Cleaner emissions, cleaner air, making cars that go farther on gas mileage is by I go so far out that you now have to come at least part my way in order for you to get what you need, or not have to go all the way over there because you know what I want to do.
Right.
And I think we as a society, we as voters need to begin to start to pull our politicians in the directions that we want to go. So find the guys that, okay, he doesn't have everything I need, but he's got enough in line with where I'm looking at, where, okay, right, I'm going to go here But in the next election, I'm going to find another guy that's even further my direction than that guy is, and start to begin, because especially your generation, there's a lot of you out there. And it's just finding common ground with enough folks to begin to actually make that third party stronger than what it is right now, because there's not enough people that's willing to get together in that third party to make a difference for, for the Bidens or the Trumps to actually hear it.
Yeah.
Because if they thought, whoa, wait a minute, 80% or 70% of the under 30s don't like what we're doing, and it's enough of them to sway this election one way or the other. Now they got to come down and start to talk to everybody and say, hey, what is it that you guys need? And I think that's how we got the tuition starting to get paid off and finding things like that, because there was enough folks saying, you guys need to do something about this, or we're going to start finding other candidates that can. The cannabis, weed was illegal, and folks like, dude, I'm not voting for somebody that's trying to throw everybody in jail behind smoking some weed. And once that folks started pushing that, it's like, okay, now it's on a national level where that conversation is there. But folks started locally, they got it statewide, and now nationally, it's at least a conversation that Barack Obama couldn't have it. Clinton and Bush never talked about it. It was still, was it Class A drug?
Mm-hmm.
So, but now with folks beginning to push locally, you start to, like I said, we're starting to get those conversations on a national level.
What do you think about the strategy that the Tea Party use when they essentially go against their own party to get their agenda passed? So they'll block like the Speaker of the House nominee and stuff like that, and they'll say, we're not voting for you unless you put this bill on the floor, or unless you put these people in position. We're not voting for you, and you need our votes in order to get it.
Yeah, it works. I mean, I think it's effective.
Why don't you think Democrats do that?
I think the part of it is Democrats want to get something done. If you pay attention to how many bills this Republican Congress has gotten through, using that, holding Mike Johnson hostage and kicking the last guy out and all the speaker stuff that's going on, they haven't really gotten anything done. The Democrats get in office and they want to actually get something done. So how productive is it going to be for me to stand over here and, hold my breath and say, I'm not doing anything until you guys do this? And now, you go 2 years and we named a bunch of post offices. And that's all we've done. I mean, I think it's an effective strategy if used correctly, because right now I think the Tea Party has pretty much gotten almost everything they wanted, if not gone even further to the right now than some of the things I think they were even asking for back when Obama was there. I mean, tax cuts was one thing now, but I mean, abortion is illegal. Their voting rights has been torn up in a lot of different places. Affirmative action, those things have all been dismantled, and it's slowly gone even further than I think anything that they could have imagined would happen. So short answer, yeah, I think it's an effective way to do it if you're willing to not do anything in order to get there.
Well, like you said, I mean, they have gotten their agenda, for the most part, and they're even getting things that they didn't ask for. So the reason I bring that up is because a few years back, during the height of COVID, there was a strategy that they put out there called Force the Vote, where they wanted the squad members, AOC and Pramila Jayapal and people like that, to withhold their vote from Nancy Pelosi to become House Speaker in exchange for a vote for Medicare for All. Not passing Medicare for All, just a vote. We just want to vote on the floor just so we can get it on the record. And there was a lot of left-wing activists who were encouraging them to do this idea. And they were just kept giving every reason why they couldn't and why they had to support Nancy Pelosi. Otherwise, the Republican's going to win. No, he's not, because he would need your votes. So that's just not true. Like, you know what I mean? The Republican can't win because there's more Democrats. At the time, there were more Democrats in the So that's not how that works. Like that, you would have had to flip and voted Republican in order for him to win. So you can still withhold your vote, and then you just have to keep going through the rounds of votes over and over and over and over again. That's how that really works. It's just that nobody wants to do that because it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
You know, it's like time consuming. That's irritating. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And are you willing to not get something done? Is what we're talking about, because that's what ended up happening. It's like, do you want to vote, or do you want to actually get something passed? And that's the hard part as well. It's like, I can vote on it, we can pass it, it's going to die in the Senate,
right?
So, and we find a piece of something, and that's part of, and this is where 45 is smart, in that use TV to get people to do what you want. There's a bunch of votes they've taken in the House that are absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't mean anything. But if you put something out there that people don't know, they took a vote on it, it's not going anywhere, but they can go back to their people and say, hey, we voted on this. And they're like, great, yeah, we'll keep you in office. As opposed to somebody saying, yeah, you voted on it, but nothing happened.
Or you could take it this route. It's, hey, we were in the middle of a pandemic, y'all, and we had a vote for Medicare for all to make sure that everybody's healthcare would be covered during this pandemic when we shut everybody's businesses down and made y'all stay home and all of this stuff. We have the list of people who said no. Vote them out.
Yeah.
That's a strategy, because like there's a lot of historical precedents that were set that failed the first few times they were put on the floor.
Yeah.
So I always think that that's, like trying is always better than not trying, I guess.
Not trying, yeah.
Because then you can always say you tried, and then somebody else is going to try harder next time, and then you have more and more support.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's just,
There's different strategies to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a matter of how much not getting done you want to do. And then I think for Democrats, they always want to govern. And if you elect somebody who believes that government works, they want to get in office and see government works. You elect somebody who says the government doesn't work, they don't care if nothing doesn't work.
Right.
They said it doesn't work.
Yeah, and then that just proves their point.
Yeah, see, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I can get in here and say it doesn't work. Nobody's going to say that, you told me there were space aliens coming down, and that's what I was voting for.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated, and to be honest, it really is going to take a lot more of us to pay attention, to know what's going on and know why. And then, like I said, because there's less than half of the country, or just over half of the country, that actually goes out and votes.
Yeah, the biggest voting block in the country is non-voters.
Yeah. And it's like, just if somebody could ever tap into that group and say, hey, come out here and put your vote in. I had a big debate with somebody at work once who he was like, I'm not voting. I'm like, man, just say, if you get out there and you start voting, even if you vote for somebody else, you're starting to, if enough people who say they're not voting go out and vote, the people in office see that 30,000 people who didn't vote got out here and voted, and they voted against me. They have to start paying attention to that.
Yes.
This election, it was 30. Oh, does that number go up to 40 for the next one? Do they start to gain traction? And there's just so many people that are willing to just say, you know what, I'm just not going to vote. I'm just not going to pay attention to it. And all you do then is that small minority continues to get their way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about you. I can get on TV and say whatever I want, because I know 60% of you aren't going to show up, and I got 35% of you in my back pocket.
Yeah. Well, I definitely strongly encourage everybody to definitely be politically involved, whether that's, canvassing, for a candidate that you like. I've done that before, for somebody who was running for House of Representatives. I like their message, and they were way, I live in Mesa, but they were way deep West Side, and I was going out there like, I'm trying to get you in here. You know what I mean? It didn't work out. It was their first time running, but still, it felt good to be a part of it. And, to just know that I was doing something besides just just talking about it, so I definitely encourage everybody to be as active as possible. I encourage everybody to vote for everything locally, everything down ballot, because that really does impact your immediate day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So I encourage everybody to do those things. At this point, like I said, I don't necessarily tell people what to do on the president part. And everybody feels different about that. So, but I do think the important thing is for gentlemen such as ourselves, especially brothers, we need to be out here, definitely trying to create more political awareness because of those reasons that you said. The more educated that we are, going back earlier in the conversation, the further we're ultimately going to end up being, or, the further we're capable of being.
Yeah. And you're right. Just get involved. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to canvass, because a lot of us, don't have that time, or we don't want to do something.
Right.
But when you get that little booklet in the mail, read through it all the way through the judges. There's a website that I used this year when I casted my vote locally, that you can pull up each name, and it told you everything about that person, where they went to school, where they stand, these are things. And you can decide based on that. A local judge is something you can pay attention to. I mean, those are just from that level up. And just once everybody begins to pay attention to the small stuff, you can not vote for president if that's what you want to do. But, make sure that your locale is funding that school over there, or fixing potholes, or trimming the trees. I mean, just whatever it is that you're looking for, that you're starting to get your voice heard through your vote. And the more people that do that, the more people that get involved in that, they'll find themselves more informed when it comes time to make an important decision. And, we're not deciding on whether or not I'm going to be having to wear a mask for a year and a half or not.
Right.
Infectious substance.
Definitely.
In China, it's probably not a good idea to close it.
Yeah.
When it does close, don't say we don't know what happened. It's like, yeah, you did. You closed the people that were supposed to tell us what happened. And if enough people can say something like that, then guess what? They're not going to close it. Because as soon as you do, everybody's up in arms. Like, hey, man, why'd you close that out there?
Mm-hmm.
People ask questions. When you don't know what questions to ask.
Exactly. You don't even know what you don't know until you start looking into it, and then you realize there's more you don't know.
Yeah.
So that's definitely how I feel about it as well. I definitely feel like also the more involved you get, the more you'll want to be involved. And, that could spark alternate pathways for you. Like this show is a direct result of me living with that gentleman and my roommates at the time in 2016 or 2014 when that happened. And then, the Bernie Sanders election, and I started really paying attention to his policies. And I was like, oh, wait, I didn't even know a lot of this stuff was stuff that we could do. Like, what do you mean free college? Like, what do you mean free healthcare? Wait, other countries do this already. What are you talking about? Like, wait, what? Like, you know what I mean? Wait, we're this country and we don't? And wait, what? Like, and so then it really was like, so, and here I am now, doing my show. So
having an interesting conversation. Just look at how much money we spend on defense budget and realize that is 10 times more than our largest ally.
If you combine the next 10 countries, I want to say,
that we're all friends with,
not as much as us. That's insane. Like, and the crazy thing is, most of that is not going to soldiers and personnel, and so it's going to weaponry and contracts and
the industrial, military industrial complex that we were warned about way back in Roosevelt's days.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And Eisenhower, isn't that interesting? Republican Eisenhower, his last thing that he said before he left, before he was finished his term, he's like, beware of the military industrial complex.
Yeah, there you go. It was Eisenhower that said, that was the quote I was looking at.
So was it? Okay, yeah. So
and
that's incredible.
And now that stuff like that, you pay attention to that. When somebody says we don't have the money to do something, it's like, well, do we really need to spend $602 billion? What happens if we just spent $600?
Didn't he send 40 billion to Ukraine and then accidentally sent another 60 billion? How do you accidentally send $60 billion to somebody? And I think or 6 billion. I'm sorry, that was the number. It was an accidental $6 billion that they sent to Ukraine on top of whatever else they were already sending them. I think it was 40 was the number. It would cost $5 billion to fix all of the homes in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But they accidentally spent 6 sending it to Ukraine, but we still don't have the money to fix Hawaii. Like, come on now.
No. It's really, like I said, but you see now that we know about it, stuff like that, and you're probably like me. It's like you're looking at the TV like, oh yeah, we got the money for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you may not know we have the money for that, but believe me, we do.
Oh, we have it.
It's out there. So yeah, this is like I said, if we can all just do our parts. I mean, we control our little circle and just hope it gets out there. And I was thinking of you with your show. There was a show on Free Speech TV. Some guys, it's called One Hood.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about, they did what we were talking about. They pushed the candidate locally. And now they did everything they can. They canvassed for him, and that guy got elected. So guess what he has now? He's got a voice with somebody that's in office.
Yep.
Because he helped, he canvassed, he worked, he got his show out there, he worked with something. So now when he sees an issue, he can go talk to a source and say, hey, can you help us out with this? And it's just, I want to see more people who have a voice, who have shows, who, get involved with stuff like that. Because, you've got the microphone.
Definitely, man. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time this evening, man. It was great talking to you. And any last words you want to leave with the people before we get out of here?
Oh, just like I said, read through that pamphlet. Get out there and vote, folks, because it does matter, whether it's locally or nationally. Your voice actually does mean something. Don't let nobody tell you that it doesn't.
That's what's up. Well, Eric, thank you very much once again for being on the show, man. This has been Shane G with Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. Please, once again, make sure you like, you share, and you subscribe for all the latest content. And I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.